This holiday season, I took a look at winter traditions and particularly exploring Hanukkah. This is for the Linglobal Learning Series. Hanukkah is celebrated by millions of people of the Jewish faith and culture around the world. I sat down to learn about Hanukkah traditions with my friends Jonathan Feigenson and Stephanie Steinberg.
This is Jonathan Feigenson, and he is my close friend, and there's no getting rid of him. So, but he actually has a special connection to Detroit. He is the great grandson of the Feigenson brothers, who are the founders of Faygo. So hence the Fay, that's where the Faygo comes from. And so, he's Detroit royalty. But I wanted to bring you on today to talk about Hanukkah traditions. And I don't think I ever asked you, do you celebrate Hanukkah?
Did celebrate it, I would say, more traditionally when I was with my parents, because it is easier to do, because every evening we have everybody already gathered around. So basically we just gather to light up a menorah, and you celebrate it for 8 nights. So every night you celebrate it when you light up one more candle than the night before, up until you have a full menorah, which has 8 candles plus the main one, so 9 in total. So you start like with 1 and the main one, so basically 2 up until 9. So yeah, we used to be more persistent when I was back with my parents because it was easier. This is actually my first time when doing it on my own. I'm not doing it as frequently as I should, like every night. I did get my own menorah. Like I think 2 days ago, I just forgot to do it. And yesterday I actually met with friends, and I thought it would be a lot more fun if I do it with a few friends together. And we had a few what's called suganya, which is kind of like a donut, but it's like a complete sphere and it's filled with jam. It's kind of like a traditional
pictures of like in the video that they look really good. They actually look like pishki or punchki, that it's a lot of like Slavic and Polish cultures. Like they have the big donuts and they're filled with all kinds of wonderful jams and things. And
I'm actually not a sweet person, but for some reason when Hanukkah comes up, I eat so much as I like, just as much as I can, because I know that they're not gonna sell it anymore right after Hanukkah, because all the bakeries, they have it only during this time of year. So I eat as many as I can at this time.
Right. And you just don't eat sweets. I don't know how we're friends, but I am going to tell the backstory. Like, we're friends because every year there's something called a polyglot conference, and it's where people from around the world gather at a location somewhere in the world, and we, speak different languages with each other. We come together because we're language enthusiasts. We speak multiple languages, and we love learning languages. And it's just a big conference where you can gather, and there's workshops if you're interested and curious about a language of whatever the host country. First time I went, it was in New York City. Then after that, it was in Greece, then Iceland, then Slovenia, and then Japan. And then this year was supposed to be in Mexico. But I think the second time I met Jonathan, and he was like so excited I was from Detroit. And I'm like, why? Because you're from Israel. And I'm just like, why are you so excited I'm from Detroit? It's like, well, because I have this Detroit connection. And then he told me the story about Faygo, and I'm just like, what? So I was super excited, and then we stayed friends. And then last year in Japan was so fun. So tell me about like your earliest memory of Hanukkah, and especially because what city are you in Israel right now?
So I actually moved like half a year ago. A few months after I came back to Israel for my big trip, I moved into Tel Aviv, which is like the second largest city by population in Israel after Jerusalem, which is the capital. And before that, I used to live in the sort of suburb of Tel Aviv with my parents.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah. So what are some of your early memories of celebrating?
Well, I remember like almost every kindergarten, and also when you're going into the first grades of school, that around this time, every time you get lessons about the history of Hanukkah and the traditions. So this is a memory I have of learning about the history. I also have memories of basically when you're in kindergarten, they give you clay to make your own menorah. And then when you have like few siblings, around this time, you always have so many menorahs to light up, more than you actually need because you only need one. And yeah, they all look kind of like this clumsy structure. But yeah, I have this memory of making them, which is fun. Yeah, I think this is like my earliest memories that I can recall.
Right, and a menorah just means candelabra, right? Where it's just like, a holder for, the candles. Is that right?
Yeah. Although in Hebrew we have two different words for it, and for some reason I only hear menorah in English. I'm not sure if it's because it refers to the two of them, or is it just a common mistake? The original menorah, this one that was also back in Jerusalem, it has basically 7 slots for candles, the main one and 3 on each side. And this is like the classic menorah, and also how it's called in Hebrew is menorah. But for Hanukkah, we have 9 candles. We have the main one and 4 on each side, and that is called the Chanukiah, which is very similar to Hanukkah, which is the reason. And the reason we have that kind of menorah is because by the story is that when the Maccabees 2,000 years ago, Israel was under the occupation of the Greeks, and the Maccabees, which were a group of Israelites, have tried to rebel against the Greeks, and they retaken Jerusalem. And when they went back to the temple, there was no oil left to light up the menorah that was the light and the temple, and there was only this small pot of oil that was supposed to last for 1 day, and it lasted for 8 days, and they said it was a miracle, and henceforth in Hanukkah you light up 8 candles, and so they made this special menorah, which is the Chanukiah, that has 8 candles.
So what is the significance of this day for you, and why do you find that you still want to celebrate Hanukkah, and even as an adult?
I think the main reason is I find that a lot of my friends are not as eager to celebrate it as I am, and sometimes I actually push them to do it with me because I'm insisting. But the reason I don't find it as religious, because I don't think I am a religious person, but it's more of enjoying the tradition itself. I like the fact that it brings people together, and I like the fact that I am commemorating some event that my dad commemorates and his dad commemorated, and so on. I think it has some sort of value that I truly treasure, even if it's not because of belief of what the religion itself or the holiday symbolizes. I enjoy my personal relation with it.
Thank you so much for providing your insight into. And I said this day, and it's 8 days, so we are in day. Oh, there's only 2 more days left. So yeah, tell me a little bit more about what you want people to know about Hanukkah and celebrating it, and why it's significant for Jewish culture, and then also the Jewish faith, because I think in some ways there's Jewish culture and Jewish the faith. So maybe you just mentioned not necessarily being totally religious. At the same time, it's a big part of your culture. Tell us a little bit about what you want people who are maybe outsiders or Gentiles and people who celebrate other holidays to know about Hanukkah.
I feel like basically to explain that I find every person celebrated a bit differently. Some are more orthodox, maybe some are less. It's not like that every Jew would preserve the same traditions the same way, or would care about it as strongly as another. It really depends on the person. And for example, as I said, I do enjoy lighting the candles, and even though I don't do it every night, every year, as some might do, and some that I know, especially in Tel Aviv, where it's a lot more secular than other areas in Israel, would not celebrate Hanukkah at all, and that's fine. It doesn't make them any less Jewish. It just depends on how you feel towards the holiday and how you want to commemorate it.
Okay, well, thank you very much for sharing your insights and sharing your story and perspective. And so happy Hanukkah to you. And so thank you so much for coming on here. And we have to see each other more often.
We sure do. And thank you for having me. It was a real treat.
All right. Hello, Stephanie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
All right. So I'm Ernestine Lyons, and I'm the founder of Linglobal, and I'm here with my friend Stephanie Steinberg. And she is not only a writer who has written for news media like the U.S. News and World Report, but she's also the founder of the Detroit Writing Room, which cultivates, upcoming writers and existing writers in the Metro Detroit area who want to write the next great novel. And they have lots and lots of events that, are focused focus around writing workshops, book clubs. There's the aspect of writing, having writing coaching services. I have invited Stephanie here to talk about the tradition of Hanukkah, which started about 2 days ago. And, I just kind of wanted to delve into, exploring what it means to celebrate traditions and what are some things that have come to America and made us like an enriched place, full of diversity, and everybody celebrates something different. So we want to just explore Hanukkah a little bit more.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I just wanted to ask a little bit more about like some of your memories. I know you said you're not a Hanukkah expert, but you are a person of Jewish faith, and this is something that you grew up with and celebrating it. So what are some of your favorite early memories of celebrating Hanukkah?
So Hanukkah typically falls in December. It changes every year based on the different calendar dates. Pretty much every December, my fondest memories of just kind of gathering with my family, lighting the menorah. And it's 8 days, so you would light a candle each night. And really, it's just a time to be together, kind of like Thanksgiving. Like you just kind of have that time to be with family, and there's typically food involved. So latkes are the potatoes, are fried and you can eat them with like applesauce, or some people like to do sour cream, and there's just lots of latkes around Hanukkah. And then also there's a game called dreidel. It's like a little spinny top. I don't have one to show you, but you spin it and you typically play for gelt, which is chocolate money. Some people play with real money, with coins, but I often play that with my family. And it's just like a nice time to gather and be with family and friends who celebrate Hanukkah as well. And there is the gift giving aspect nowadays. Hanukkah is really not supposed to be about the gift giving part, but as I kind of mentioned to you before, it falls around Christmas. So, over time, I think us Jews started kind of just jumping into the gift-giving spirit and incorporated that into the traditions as well.
And it's funny you mentioned, I know that a lot of people have asked like, oh, Hanukkah's just Jewish Christmas. And it's like, it's not the same. But I think because in America, we were so, for so long focused on the commercialism of Christmas, you just kind of have Christmas is so commercial and it's inundated. And the biggest aspect isn't really even when you look at both Judeo-Christian faiths, gift giving was never really a big part of either, tradition historically, but, it became something that, is so commercial that, okay, well, you're giving gifts on this side and you're giving gifts on that side. So it's like gifts all around. And I think that's something that all of us tend to lose, the fact that it's like neither holiday is about gifts. I'm glad you made that distinction and kind of described that. What is the significance, the true significance, getting beyond the commercialism, the true significance of Hanukkah for you, and what are these 8 days really like?
Yeah, so Hanukkah, it signifies the festival of lights and a miracle that happened. So the story, and just this is the basic story, there's a lot more detail involved, but in Israel long ago, there was a king, an evil king called King Antiochus, and he didn't allow Jews to practice their religion. He basically took over a temple in Jerusalem, which was a very important temple, destroyed it, inside. And so there was a group of Jews called the Maccabees, a small group that kind of rose up and decided to fight back. And they won. And when they went back into that temple and they discovered that their menorah was, kind of destroyed and damaged, but there was a little bit of oil left, and it really should have been enough for one night. But the miracle was that it lasted 8 nights. So that's where you get the 8 nights of Hanukkah. And it's really meant, this holiday is meant to celebrate miracles and good things. So it's just a nice reminder of, to step back, like think about the positives that are going on, especially in this year, and the small miracles do happen. So yeah, that's sort of, it's just a nice celebratory occasion. And Hanukkah's not really the most important holiday, I should note, in the Jewish culture. Really, Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah are like the two major holidays. Like I said, everyone's come to know this holiday just because it falls around the Christmas time.
And you talked about like the story of the Maccabees, and I think that's really interesting because I went to Wayne State, and I always spent a lot of time in the Maccabees building. And one, I love historical architecture, and I love that building in particular. So I would go into the Maccabees building, and I would always notice that there were, that you see the Star of David, and there were all of these nods to, a history that I didn't know much about. This, to me, it actually sheds a light on, what the building's original purpose was, and like who was actually the founders. And I know that it was built by Albert Kahn, who also had Jewish heritage, and his wife was named Ernestine. So yeah, I'm glad that you shed some light on the history and the story. What is one significant thing that you really want people to know most about Hanukkah? Because I think I just learned something new from you, just kind of telling those facts about the celebration.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing is, we light the menorah each night. That's like the main symbolic gesture that we do. And it's really, it's meant to just be a positive holiday, and, celebrating with friends and family and having a good time. But, it's not about getting a present each night. Like, I think a lot of people think, oh, you're Jewish, that's amazing, you get like presents every single night for 8 nights. And like a lot of people would ask me that growing up when I was like in elementary school. Like kids would be jealous, like, oh, you get like 8 Christmases. And I'm like, no, that's not really what it's about. It's not about the gifts. Some families do that. Like I would get maybe something small each night, but for Christmas you might get 8 presents, from your family too. So it's not.
Yeah, we would definitely overdo the presents. So.
So yeah, it's not about like getting this grand big gift every single night, but it's just about being together and celebrating a nice holiday.
That does sound really, it's a really good reason to gather. And, I know that things are going to be different this year for everybody, no matter what faith and what you're celebrating, because we can't really gather. But I think it's that time to kind of slow down, because in my research I did hear a little bit about like how during certain holidays, especially like Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, people try to avoid using things like technology, and it's really a time for you to just kind of step back and really think about the things you're grateful for. Kind of leads me into, I reached out to you because I wanted to know a little bit more about your faith, and I understand that you having a background in journalism and reporting and telling stories, it seems like there could have been a parable between like, just kind of growing up having these stories and hearing about different things like the Maccabees. And where do you draw parallels between like growing up in this tradition and hearing these wonderful stories, and then how do you think it shaped you now?
That's interesting. I never thought about it that way, but now that you kind of mention it, it makes sense, because growing up you'd hear stories from the Torah, right? Like that's I'm sure in the Christian culture, right, you're not following the Torah, but it's the Old
Testament and the New Testament. So
right. I always get fuzzy on that, but it's hearing stories that from long ago have been passed down, and written down, right? And I think subconsciously over my childhood, like I would hear these stories, in Sunday school or at temple, and that storytelling aspect, whether it's the rabbi or a teacher sharing the stories, ingrained in me a little bit. And so I became a storyteller myself, not because of the stories that I heard, but I think over time, all those elements, you hear stories, you read stories, it all kind of comes together. And for me, it all kind of came together into what I do now as a career. But I don't know if that answered your question, but
oh, it definitely did, because I think it's really, just kind of coming from a oral tradition where you're hearing these stories, and it's a big part of, and then even during like a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah, you would have to recite something, and telling these stories and being able to hear something, tell it in a succinct way and also in a moving way. It could be a part of shaping how well you tell stories and how well you're really reporting facts.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think there's a part of that that's very true. And I think, you know, growing up too, I grew up in a household where my mom read books to me every single day, you know, like after she was a school teacher. So she'd come home and then read children's books to me. And I think that all is part of it. You know, I was just constantly encompassed in storytelling. So I guess it's very natural that I became one myself.
Well, you know what? Thank you so much for sharing, you know, your traditions and shedding light and explaining and, you know, just kind of telling the story of the significance of Hanukkah to you and what it means to you and what has this year been like for you and your husband. And, you know, have you been able to really gather with family, maybe even socially distance, or is it just completely different because 2020 is 20?
2020. We made that decision. Typically, you know, my parents would host a big Hanukkah party, and then also his family would host a big Hanukkah party. So we'd have Hanukkah parties on both sides. We decided this year, like, no one's really doing anything. We just want to be safe and make sure that everyone's healthy. And we'll look forward to next year when we can have another big gathering again, hopefully, fingers crossed. So it's really, you know, Jake and I are celebrating on our own and just observing, and, you know, it's just a nice time to be with each other, and next year we'll be with everybody else.
Happy Hanukkah to you. You know, we're in day 3.
Tonight is the 4th night, so it started on the 10th at sundown. Mm-hmm. So that was technically the first night.
And so how many latkes? Is it lakka?
Lakka. Like lot, like a parking lot, and then
Latka. Oh, there we go. Okay, love it. They sound so good. I've never had them, and now I'm going to be looking for.
Once this pandemic is over, I will make you some latkes. We will get together, and it'll
be perfect. I'm so looking forward to that because I don't know. Like I was just like watching some videos on how to make them, and I'm like, oh my gosh! But I already love potatoes. Have you guys like been making them like all during this season so far?
To be totally honest, there's like the box way of making them, and then there's like the traditional from scratch, like peeling the potatoes. I am not so much a cook, so I'm more of like the box latke side, but my family makes really good ones that are real, so that's where I get them. But yeah, we'll get you some latkes after this, I promise, or I'll send you some. You can order them from some local restaurants too.
That's what, because, you know, small businesses have kind of been, you know, suffering, and that's what I'm going to be looking for, you know, ways to support a small business that, you know, and kind of just try them out for myself. So, but yes, I'm looking forward to taking you up on that offer, and I want to thank you so much for coming and joining me and explaining, you know, and enlightening me and sharing this with, you know, just our Linglobal friends out there who want to celebrate just traditions from all over the world. And yeah, thank you so much.
You asked me. This is what it's all about, and sharing information. And anyone, once, you know, things reopen again and you all want to come over to the writing room to check it out, you are more than welcome to. I would love to see you there.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So thank you for joining.